how the crew is treated on the crab boat. That's what normal treatment is. Not just braving waves a dozen meters high to catch crabs. $200 to even step on deck with your left foot first. But if you're about to have sex, you will enjoy the highest level of service. It's not just a concierge. There's a plane to take you home, and the captain pays the entire bill. All it costs you is a kidney. Babies who want to go sign up. This video follows the timeline. The picture came to the pad. The wounded are in good condition. Let's just say there's no immediate danger. Captain Carr is on his way to Dutch Harbor at full speed. His plan was to get past the edge of the storm. Enter Dutch Harbor Coast helicopter rescue inside. The crew below watched the condition of the wounded. I thought back to Todd, who died in January. He was dead before the rescue plane picked him up. The crew feared the same thing for the wounded, so they keep them awake at all times. Coast Guard 225 miles northeast. The rescue aircraft carries 1,170 liters of fuel. They can fly for 5 hours on fuel. It takes 2 hours to get from the base to the pad. This fuel reserve is sufficient. Get your gear ready for the chopper. The captains on the surface learned of the plane's departure, and all our best wishes for the pad. Then came Norway, 3,800 miles to the northwest. The weather here is getting pretty bad. The rolling waves on the sea made Old White quite worried. White said he was heading east, but you know what happened. So now change course to the West Canyon. 2 weeks in Norway and no crabs. So White kind of misses his baby girl. But $800,000 has already been spent. No big king crabs out there. Old White is not going home with that old face. So Old White has to get the crab pot out now. Then try the water in the West Canyon. With the arrival of the float near, crews also began salvage operations. Crab pot on board, no accident chicken hair. Old White expected this outcome long ago, so the mood is not any ripples. The crew then resumed the salvage. As the take-up machine begins to turn, the crew was surprised to find that there were crabs in the cage. They're not going to be happy yet. The crab pot danced a ballet against the waves. This scared the crew to flee. When the crab pot settled, the crew tried to get in. Old White quickly warned the sailor. Fortunately, the sailor heard Bai's cry. That's what stopped the carnage. A few minutes of waiting followed. The storm subsided a little. The crew then went up in fear to retrieve it. After the fish out of the Old White is not going to continue. Let the crew work tomorrow when the storm subsides. While the crew rest, Old White is going to the west to throw some crab pots first. 3,600 miles southeast of the Thief. Nathan is now at the port of St. George's Island. The storm is now 50 knots strong. They had to lean on the anchor, barely position the ship to balance. And I have to worry about breaking the anchor. So the crew is standing on the deck. Keep an eye on the tightness of the anchor. So Nathan decided the pain was better than the pain. Straight out to sea to catch crabs. You know, the risk of pulling in the wind is high. Anderson broke his anchor twice as a result. I don't know what Nathan was thinking. As the crew reaches the anchor position, Nathan's leading from above. Freddie operates the winch in the back. The rest of the crew keeps an eye on the chain, and a crew member keeps the chain straight at all times, because a little bending can cause the anchor to snap. After half an hour of busy work, the anchor was at last brought up with little danger. Nathan was also relieved at this point. It's not a good feeling to be on your toes. Once you find your destination, Nathan again headed for the Bering Sea, 270 miles southwest of the pad. They're in the rescue zone now. The condition of the wounded is also a little better than before. I can talk to the crew normally. Now the crew is asking for the wife's name. Then learned that the wounded wife called Autumn Day. They have 2 babies. The crew told the wounded man to think about his wife. Let him better stick to it. The view goes to the captain's room. Carl sailed for 28 hours nonstop, in the worst possible condition. He described his eyes as being pricked with needles. And Carl was worried about the storm. He was afraid the storm would interfere with the helicopter rescue. It has looked like a pretty big storm. A few minutes later, Carl got the radio, right across from the rescue workers. They inquired as usual about the condition of the wounded. That's when the crew on deck saw the helicopter. The pilot then told them to remove the boom. The boom is removed and the helicopter arrives over the ship. The crew says it's amazing to watch this thing save people. Talk to Carl later. Start asking for specific information about the wounded. Bala bala bala. After asking for information on the wounded, prepare rescue measures in the helicopter, in this rescue operation, and by all the captains at sea. Keep an eye on it by radio. Then the pilot found his position. Start airborne. There was so much wind down there that one of the crew pulled it. The landing went well anyway. Then the stretcher was parachuted down. This made Carl stand still. The crew then teamed up to carry the stretcher inside. Paramedics check the vitals when we get to the victim. Then the crew carried him out. Carl up there watching it all. It's like watching a movie live. It's not like the movies. Your crew is dying. I don't want to put a lid on the wounded. Then the helicopter began to exert force. The wounded man went to heaven like this. It's the paramedics' turn when the wounded are elevated. The paramedics just pulled it up and went up. Then this rescue mission is over. Once the EMTs got back on the plane, run some basic tests on the wounded and report back to headquarters. Just keep going to Dutch Harbor. Carl was relieved to see the helicopter go. The rest of the captains listening were relieved. Then came Norway, for 1,000 miles to the northwest. Bill finally accepted White's offer. With his own deck captain, Langdon, after leaving the airport, they got into a 20-hand pickup. Then Bill said that coming to Norway this time was a big risk. But he can't because he didn't get his quota for Dutch Harbor. Plus, there's a $400,000 repair bill on the Summer Bay. I had no choice but to find a way out of Old By. Then Langdon asked Bill what his plan was. Bill said White sent himself to a captain named Tobias. Just do what White wants. 340 miles outside the Arctic Circle. Old White got a call from Bill. Bill said he had arrived in Norway. Let me ask you, White, where's the captain? Old White just told me the address. Then Old By talked about the price of king crab. Bill was shocked when he heard $20 a pound. Boy, that's 4 times the size of a snow crab. 1.5 times the golden king crab. Good guy didn't ask the price until Bill showed up. He deserves to be called Wild Bill. Then he hung up after a little chat. The time came half an hour later. Bill and the two of them are where White said they were. I saw the boat. Then he met the captain, Tobias. Isn't that what the good guy is, Fat? Old White used to box with him. After saying hello, the two men got down to business. Fat says he can't hold more than 30 crab pots on this boat. But Bill was not satisfied with the loading capacity and asked if the little Fat can be reformed. No need to pay for it himself. Then they went in to study the chart. First, Chubby suggested a place he frequented, but Bill felt the place was too shallow. Then the two of them have a chat and analysis. Bill wasn't satisfied after half an hour of analysis. This old Bill is high maintenance. Let them talk first and we'll see Old White. The weather here is not so good. Not only are the winds at 40 knots, but the waves are 6 meters high. Plus a crab that can't be caught. Old White is so numb. Then the Old White and introduced the cage. White says it's because this place looks like a crab's claw. Plus it's a big drop. So Old White knows from experience that there are crabs in this place. After the introduction, the crew began to finish the crab pot. When the crab pot is ready, the depth is 280 meters. The crab pot immediately went into the sea. Then the Old White said he was very uncomfortable these 2 days. And not just because you didn't catch a crab, and because it's not my own boat. The crew is not their own crew. Excuse me, White's just chartering a boat right now. As the cage mission progresses, the wind and waves on the sea are getting stronger. It could even blow the crew to the ground. Then the maintenance worker informed the Old White. There was a lot of water seepage on the kitchen floor. So the Old White hurriedly shouted, "Get the crew back here and leave the cage alone." Old White also quickly ran down to check. Don't Noah looked startled. This is still the kitchen. This is a dump. Old White began to move the fallen objects. The crew arrived at this time, so the people began to clean up the kitchen, mopping the floor using all 18 kinds of martial arts. Old White here also found the leaking pipe. Laubai said that he had been feeling ill for half an hour. Now I know why I'm uncomfortable. The time came half an hour later. Old White see the cabin is almost cleaned. Let the crew rest before returning to work. Then the view goes to the Dutch Harbor Marine Police Department. They succeeded in bringing the wounded back. When the ambulance arrives, they rush the wounded to an ambulance. The rescue mission is complete when we transfer the vehicle. Then the view goes to the pad. Carl got a call from the Coast Guard and get updates on the condition of the wounded. The wounded will be flown to Anglake, although the wounded have been transferred to the best hospitals. But Carl's still not so sure, Can only help the wounded more medical bills. The picture goes to the cabin. The crew is also in a sad mood. Once again, the picture comes to the Norwegian port. Bill got to the fishing boat early in the morning. It would be nice to have the crew ready for the day. It turns out there's nothing on the boat. Not even the fishing line on the anchor hook is ready. Bill was a little upset. After all, it's been a whole day. Not to say it's a big change you haven't changed at all. Then Bill started asking them what was going on. Cross-examination revealed a simple disagreement between them. And then Bill was cool enough to give them chicken soup. Well, it all worked out in the end. For 1,000 miles southeast of the Thief. They don't have the best weather here either. Even the crew got in on the weather joke this time. Nathan said last time they averaged 28. This time I ventured deeper into the cage. Why do we have to have 30 of them in each cage? He's got 40 crab pots in this one. As the boat approaches the float, the crew immediately began salvage work. Start with take-up machine. Nathan also excitedly stood up to watch. Crab pot boarding this cage did not disappoint everyone. The crew sorted out 33 of them. Boy, that's more than Nathan expected. It's a bit of a tonic for the crew. The next harvest was even worse. After sorting, there were 48 of them. Nathan said it was his best harvest of the year, and the crew is going crazy with it. While the crew rejoiced, a big wave gave them a cold shower. And then there was another wave. Not only are the crew okay, even braved the waves to pull out another cage. There are also 32 in this cage after sorting. I'm so excited for Nathan. Then the view goes to the stow. After dealing with the waves, Old White found that the coffee machine he bought was broken. And I've had this coffee maker for 5 years. There would be no White without this coffee machine. After all, a day without coffee. Old White felt worse than a day without smoking. Then the time came the next night. White hasn't had coffee all day now. In order not to get sleepy while fishing for crab pots, Old White just smoked a pack of cigarettes. On deck, the crew was fishing for crab pots. follow the crab pot onto the deck. Old White was not sleepy in an instant, because there are crabs in this cage, even though there's only 2 in there. But now we've found crabs. Then place the crab pot in place. The footage came to the Norwegian port, Bill, and they have everything ready. Then they too want to play with the king crabs. The view comes to Dutch Harbor. The doctor at the hospital contacted Captain Carr. The wounded were told they were out of danger. Bala bala bala. This episode ends on the pat. Here is the harvest for the captains.